I've been published in about 150 books, 45 different languages, have a star on the Walk of Fame for my literary work. Well, first of all, we're the weirdest event. We're known as the greatest event you cannot attend. You have to know someone, be invited, but no matter what, you have to go fill out an application. People come over, they sit there and say, how can my life be better? I said, be more like my gardener. And it's very interesting. This guy is an amazing individual. That's the key. I always say this one quote, do the hardest thing first and the rest is easy. I wake up every day and go, what's the hardest thing I got to do? And I do that first thing.
Welcome to another episode of the Big Umbrella Podcast. That's big with two G's. I'm going to repeat that. That's big with two G's. The Big Umbrella Podcast. And I want to welcome on our guest, Greg Reed.
Now, I got a question. Why is it two G's?
That's because when we first did it, I remember, I think when I first did it, it was it kept on going to, there was a channel, I believe, that was already had that, or it was what are those things called?
So you rebranded it.
I had to, because there was like something with the big like it was they kept on going to a little book, like a book about the big red umbrella and things like that. So the two G's, it obviously made it different from that. And the more and more traction it gets, it's going to always go to that one.
Plus, it's kind of cool because every time you say two G's, it brands it in people's mind. Exactly. It's funny, my event's called Secret Knock, and I go secretknock.co. There's no M on the end, so you won't find it on the internet. You got to know someone to even locate the thing. But by actually saying that, it sets it up to make it unique where people go out and Google.
So if you do go look at it in just .co, you're not going to find it.
Well, the whole idea is that secretknock.co. And look we've already said it 4 times. So we just branded it, which is the whole point. That's pretty cool, even saying the double G's.
So now, and that was another thing I was going to jump into probably even later, but we already talked about it now. What even started the Secret Knock?
Well, it's kind of interesting.
What is the Secret Knock?
Well, I'll have to reverse this one from the very beginning. So for those of you who are new to my work, don't feel bad. I'm not very famous here in San Diego either.
Even though he has 2 million followers. He's just not very famous.
I've been published in about 150 books, 45 different languages, have a star on the Walk of Fame for my literary work. And what happened is that people kept saying, how do I get to meet the people that I was interviewing for these different projects? So we started here in the living room. And people said, do I need a ticket? And I said, nah, just when you come to the door, go bump, Secret Knock. And it took off. And now we're Forbes Inc. Entrepreneur Success Top event in the entire world for entrepreneurs. So it started out almost like a cliche, a joke. And now it's became something that's pretty amazing.
And with that, you starting the Secret Knock. What type of people do you have in those events?
Well, first of all, we're the weirdest event. We're known as the greatest event you cannot attend. You have to know someone, be invited, but no matter what, you have to go fill out an application, meaning you cannot go on the internet and just buy a ticket. You have to go through a system and a filter. And the reason is that we want to invite people that we can actually have contribution to give back to. So for example, if you're a brand new entrepreneur and you're struggling and you're just making your way, we might not be the best fit for you, but there's a million other events out there. But if you got 3 pizza shops and you're trying to grow and expand and you're looking for some collaboration or connection, we're your ideal fit. So we want to make sure that before we take your $5,000 ticket that we can deliver back to you as well.
And like you just said, it's a $5,000 ticket. So you put in your application, then you put in, then obviously if you accept it.
Now here's the best part. Once you're accepted, we will not tell you where it is or who will be there. Nothing. We just say the city, state, and date. That's it. And then it's kind of up to you. And then what we do is we start dripping the information as we get closer, but only the people that are on the list will even know where we're at. And we move it around constantly. And by doing that, we've had the opportunity to have like President Vicente Fox come up from Mexico without Secret Service. And he could tell us how George Bush tried to convince him to go to war in Iraq. We've had private Skypes with Edward Snowden while he's hiding in Russia. Carol Baskin from the Tiger King just came in last time to tell us she never even met Joe Exotic. And the people we got coming to this next one will absolutely blow your mind.
And how is it that you even meet the people to get to these events?
Well, again, it's word of mouth now is what it comes down to. And a lot of times I go out and do public speaking events, talk about the different books, and people say, hey, how do I come to your event? And then that opens up a door of conversation. Or we already said the website about 30 times. People go there, they fill out an application, it goes to our system.
And how long have you been doing this?
17 years.
17 years.
Yeah. Sold out, standing room only, 6 months out every single time.
you remember what the first event was like?
Oh yeah, it was tiny. And then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. But it was a small event. So we sold it out because it was only like 30 tickets. That's all the room would hold. And then it kept growing, expanding. And now we're at a location that's 3 stories with just people packed to the rafters and hanging out with the most amazing people on earth.
So even before you got to creating the Secret Knock, where did you grow up?
Right here in the mean streets of San Diego. West Coast, born in the mean streets of a town called Del Mar. You might have heard of it.
The mean streets of
Del Mar. You
Mar.
have no idea, man. Growing up, it was rough. One time the gardener couldn't show and my dad made me mow the lawn. It was a rough life. I was in a street gang. At night, we'd break into Maseratis and detail them. Yeah, we're a tough group. So again, it's kind of interesting. As you know, not all of us have to go from, famine and from the streets to have success in our lives. I grew up a very successful family, and I've been carrying that tradition to my son as well.
Mm-hmm. So what was like, so you said you grew up in a successful family. How were your parents? It
was awesome. They weren't entrepreneurs. They were business people that ran major corporations here in San Diego. And it was really nice is that they, got to see that corporate side of things, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I was 17, I left the home. I was graduated high school. I was going to leave and they go, I want you to go to college. I go, I have no desire to go. And I remember they said, well, you got to go to college somewhere or you can't live here. And I says that I will move out and I'll figure my way. Mm-hmm. And I remember as I was leaving, I was packing up my stuff and I was walking out the door and my dad came up and says, son, you're never going to make a living talking to people. Mm-hmm. And now it's the running joke in our family because that's exactly what I do.
And your parents are still around?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So now, did your mom support what you were doing?
Well, no one really supported it because they all wanted me to go follow the footsteps of the normal corporation lifestyle, which I understand because all we know is all we know. But I remember when I went into sales and marketing, the first time I made a 6-figure income when I was a kid, I sent him a W-2 saying, hey, family, remember when you said I'd never make money? And then when I moved my way up to be the top sales rep and I quit to go into management for another corporation, they told me I was crazy. And then once I quit that to start my own company, they said I was crazy. And then when I sold that to go into this business, they told me I was crazy. And so every time someone tells me I'm crazy, I just know I'm on the path to something special.
What gave you the mentality to always want to push forward, even though they're telling you crazy?
I never let other people tell me what I can and cannot do. That is the rule of thumb.
So that we just have to close the door because of the gardener. Now he told me he has a great story about the gardeners.
It's kind of interesting. I always, people come over, they sit there and say, how can my life be better? I said, be more like my gardener. And it's very interesting. This guy is an amazing individual. And I'll tell you the reason why. When he first started in the neighborhood, he just mowed my lawn. And he came and did it for pennies on the dollar just to get the job. But then he was so good, he started doing the next door neighbors because people kept asking how much I was getting for. And then the next one. Now he's doing the entire cul-de-sac in the entire area. But more importantly about that, this guy is a sharp businessman. You see, I have these video games, it's places like Bachelor Pad. And in the garage, I had these big giant ones that I bought from a Chuck E. Cheese that went out of business. And I didn't know how to get rid of these things. So one day I said, I'm just going to get rid of them. I'll donate them to the trash or whatever. And I asked my gardener, can you get these out of the house? He said, absolutely. I'll pick them up Saturday at noon. Saturday at noon, all of a sudden, a bunch of trucks pull up and I go, oh man, you need all these to get these out? He goes, no. He goes, I just sold them all. I go, what? He goes, yeah. He goes, I ran an ad. People came here to buy those machines. I'm just loading them up on the truck so people are pulling them out. I go, how much did you make? He goes, $2,000 a machine.
Oh man.
So the same, exactly. But that's his mindset. He's constantly looking for these opportunities. And I notice even if he doesn't have the resource, he opens up for a referral. For example, he also noticed that people had cleaning services. So he said, hey, my wife does cleaning. And then all of a sudden the wife started cleaning the houses. Right. So he'd mowed the front lawn.
Doing the yard.
Brilliant. This guy's a real businessman.
Right. That is actually a good story. Not one that I was even expecting about a gardener. Because that's more than even what a gardener is. That's a whole businessman. He made something and turned it into something major. He started from one yard and now he's doing the whole neighborhood.
Well, here's where it gets really good. I asked him the other day, I go, do you like the life that you built? And he goes, no, I'm just doing this temporarily. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm giving myself 20 years. He goes, back home, all the money I make, I send it back home. He goes, I bought here's cool. He bought 2 houses And he goes, but they're actually estates where all my family live on now. And I'm just building that out. And I says, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, I just bought a hardware store and another different one that my uncles are running. So I'm over here because I've got such much great opportunity that I'm sending it back home. And after 20 years, I'm going to go retire and everything's set.
Wow. So
I'm be like the gardener.
Right. So that's a good point to be like, though. He's really setting himself up. Like, so I'm giving myself 20 years. Most people, they're like, they not even gonna do much in the 20 years. They're gonna probably stay at the same level. A lot don't even excel, but he already has a goal in mind as to what he's gonna accomplish. And now I can go back home and everything's set for me. I can go back home and everybody's working and I'm still making the money.
Isn't that crazy?
I set up everything for it. So that definitely works out.
Yeah. It's so interesting. All I do is I go around the world and I meet the most powerful, influential people and sometimes the gardeners. And I ask them their stories. And most people don't do that. So I have a philosophy. It's called TTE, talk to everyone, because everyone we meet will know something we don't know.
TTE, talk to everyone. That's a good one. I like that. I actually, yeah, that is, and that's something with this podcast. I mean, with all the different guests that I have, like we talk to crazy different amount of different people. So I definitely understand that. But I kind of wanted to segue back to with you growing up and having the mentality just to always push forward, not letting anybody tell you what you should do. You as a child, were you an only child?
I had a brother that moved away when I was very, very young. So I was grown up, an only child, that philosophy. But yeah, I always had that attitude. In fact, I always had that entrepreneurial mindset. In fact, when I was a kid, I wanted a bike and there was no way I could work or anything like that. So I took the family lawnmower. I went door to door and I got the neighbors to pay me $10 to mow the neighbor's yard. And then I hired all the other kids for $5 in the neighborhood to mow the lawn for me. And I got in trouble. Because I was taking advantage and I was abusing and taking advantage of these other kids. Yet I saw it as an entrepreneurial business. More importantly, if I wanted a bike, these other kids wanted a popsicle or something else themselves. Right. Like, so I'm helping them get what they want. Exactly. It's so funny. So as a kid, I was in trouble for it because again, my parents had the corporate mindset, not the entrepreneurial mindset. And this is always the mentality. In fact, when you write a book, you do something called the query letter. It says who you are, what's your message, why are you an expert, who's going to read your book. Now, for those of you who don't know my work, I'm dyslexic. I can't spell, can't read, can't write very well. If you play me Words with Friends, you'll win every single time. And I'm a world-renowned author. And the way I do that is you work your strengths and you hire your weaknesses. When I did my first book, I was turned down 268 times in a row. And the 269th publisher said, we'll do your book, just change the title, beginning, middle, and end. It was horrible. Again, I'm dyslexic. So it was like, boy.
He said change the title. So it's just
everything.
Change it. Oh, right. He's telling you to change the whole book.
Whole book. And I did. And I sat there and said, teach me. What am I missing? And they said, your message is great, but you need a ghostwriter to bring it to life. So if I would sit there and say, a boy wants a bicycle, he gets off his backside, he mows lawns, makes money, buys a bike. They took it and recrafted it and says, it was a glorious Sunday afternoon when a young bright-eyed lad caught the entrepreneurial spirit as he went outside, and they crafted it in a book form. And that went on to sell just gadillions of copies. So much so that one quote from that book was shared an estimated 37 million times. It says, a dream written down with a date becomes a goal broken down into steps becomes a plan backed by action makes your dreams come true. It's on bumper stickers, t-shirts, coffee mugs. My quote that was turned down 268 times in a row.
That quote kind of reminds me of the one that Denzel Washington, he kind of said the same thing along those lines. Because I actually was looking on your Instagram, I don't know, today, a few days ago, whenever it was, and I seen that quote and it reminded me of the same thing because that's actually something that I listen to like, it's like for 5 minutes in the morning and they tell you like listen to your positivity type of thing. So I do that and that was kind of something that I seen on yours. I like that quote as well. When you said you're dyslexic, so you said you couldn't read or write?
Yeah, it's horrible.
To this day?
Yeah, right now. So I cannot read very well. I can't write very well. I get by. It's like anything else. I live life. Yeah, right. I could not sit down and read my own books.
Right.
That's what's so crazy.
Even now. So that's, wow.
Absolutely not. So what's interesting is that I am dyslexic and I use that as a tool to help me. So I work my strengths and I hire my weaknesses. I am full of crap. I'm a great talker. I'm a good wordsmith. I'm an orator. So I get these ghostwriters and editors that sit down and take my words and then craft them in a way that people would want to read them by the millions. And that's how I've created my success.
So with you being dyslexic, how did that affect you in school?
Oh, it's horrible. Again, they didn't have, back in the 80s, there was no such thing. No one knew what it was.
So they just said like, you're retarded.
Yeah, they just thought that I was slow or I was behind. And so what I did for myself is I never let other people set my limitations and tell me what I could and could not do.
And is that why it started from that, when they were telling you, oh, you can't do this or you can't do this, so you must be this? And it's like, now growing up, I'm never going to let this affect me again.
Yeah, I never even took it as a negative. I always took it as, well, what's the solution here? So again, this is one of the things that I learned very early. Successful people seek counsel and failures listen to opinion. Opinion is based on ignorance, lack of knowledge, inexperience. People have never done what you want to do. Counsel is based on wisdom, knowledge, mentorship. People have paved the way. If I go to a family friend and say, I'm going to write a best-selling book, they're going to try to talk me out of it to convince me that I'm dyslexic, but more importantly, they've never written a best-selling book.
Right.
So if I went to Mark Victor Hansen, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul and sold 1 billion copies, he says, Greg, here's what you want to know, and gives me counsel. If we would spend our activity only seeking counsel and we ignore opinion, that's the day our lives would change. So in my world, I only seek counsel.
So with you only seeking counsel during your early childhood, were you picked on a lot?
No, I was always the leader.
See, and look at that. So it obviously shows, because I mean, just like how you said, your parents kind of wanted you to pave that way, just stay in school, stay in school. Obviously, that is not something you have to do.
Correct. And so we had a philosophy back in school. I mean, I haven't gone back there. I'm 60 years old. Talking about high school is like
way back.
45 years ago. I
Right.
mean, it's like a whole different world. But the rule was, since I didn't get good grades, as long as I did extracurricular activities, they didn't really mind. So I got D's and F's and C's. I mean, I saw one of my report cards and it was like 2 F's, 2 D's, and 3 C's. And that was a good report card. But I was captain of the wrestling team. I was president of the drama club. I was in choir. I had the radio station during lunch, the DJ'd and stuff like that. I constantly had activities throughout the community.
Right.
So I was never out in the streets getting in trouble, and I was always, keeping busy and working my strengths.
Right. And with you now having a son, are you looking to push him in the same direction that you're headed, or you're just open to whatever comes his way?
Well, you should actually interview him. He's a great podcast host, guest, by the way. And what's really interesting, he's 11 years old, and I learned so much from him. But I was doing one interview maybe a year ago that completely transformed his and my existence. And the host asked me, goes, do you give your kid money to do things he doesn't like to do around the house, like make his bed, mow the lawn? I go, yes, I'm going to teach my kid the respect. She goes, stop. That's a shame. You're ruining your child forever. And so what do you mean? He goes, think about it. You're training your kid from the earliest of memory. The only way to make money is to do something they don't like. Change everything. I sat him down and said, hey, Colt, I go, you make these cool TikTok videos and Instagram stuff. I go, from now on, you're my videographer. And I go, why don't we work your strengths? And how about you live in this house and the life you do, and we'll call it contribution, make your bed just for the give back. But it changed our dialogue. So now when he says, hey, I need some new Jordans, he says, how many TikToks can I make for you? And he's working his strengths and outsourcing the weaknesses.
So now let's give you a scenario that he's going, like, so he's doing good and everything. How do you help him when he's going left, as far as he's not going how it's supposed to go? He's young right now and everything's on the path. But I mean, obviously, as we know, life can get tricky. So if or when he happens to tread left, how do you
we have not had that situation yet. On the same note, I always have open conversation and communication. So I've never done baby talk with my kid. I've never treated him like a kid. I just treat him like a dude. You just met him. He's a dude. Shakes you in the hand, looks you in the eye. He's 11 years old, right?
Yeah, we were talking about the UFC game up there, how they're going to have Mike Tyson on there.
It's a whole different, it's a whole different world. So what I did is I realized that, I told him very early on, I go, we're 50 years apart. I'm an old dad. And I says, look, I'm not going to leave you my money. I'm going to spend it all. So good luck to you. But I'm going to train you every single thing I did so you could do it for yourself. And that's always been the mindset. So we talk about every topic you can imagine as an adult. And by doing that, that kid is armed with, and he's educated. He doesn't have to learn it on the streets. He doesn't have to learn it from his friends. He doesn't have to experiment because he's actually getting the firsthand knowledge.
You learn everything from dad.
Yeah. And we're just, and his mom, I've got the greatest ex-wife in the world, by by the way. She's amazing. Her name's Alin. She even runs my Secret Knock women events. Her boyfriend and us and family, we all get along great. We do holidays together and we co-parent very well. So it's a little yin and yang. But again, we're into the open communication. That's what we were missing as kids.
I see. Oh, from between you and your family, open communication.
Majority of kids and their parents. I mean, when you grew up, you had probably 7 minutes a day with FaceTime with your dad. That's the average time.
Well, I didn't grow up with my dad. So, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But the average person gets 7 minutes a day of the FaceTime. With us, we get all this time. So it's a whole different era of communication because there's so many of us entrepreneurs now that have more time and resources to spend and educate and train these kids. So I don't think they're going to fall in the same steps that we had to.
What made you be a dad later in life instead of early on? Obviously, that was
my
your
wife
path,
got pregnant. That's
just what happened.
That's what happened.
You didn't want them earlier.
I just never had a kid. And I got to tell you, it's been a great learning lesson. I mean, I constantly learn something every single day from this guy. But anyway, so back to the thing is that you also got to be careful what you say because they're watching and they're learning. Oh, yes. So one time right after COVID hit, I remember we had our first party and I said, Colt, go contribution, go make your bed, clean the room, do the whole bit. 15 minutes later, his friend comes downstairs. He has a handful of money and goes, Dad, put this in my bank. I go, where'd you get that from? He goes, your son, Colt. I go, Colt, come on down here. I go, what'd you give him money for? And the other kid says, well, he paid me money to make his bed and to clean the room. That
was kind of like with you and the...
And he said to me, he goes, Dad, you taught me to work my strengths and hire my weaknesses. I had other stuff to do. And so that is the truth.
So in a way, like he is following exactly in your footsteps.
In its own way.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's something you're proud to see.
Yeah. And I'm also... surprised all the time. So, but he's being an actor and he's doing his own stuff. I mean, he's doing his own gig. So back to the books though, I want to talk about this. So some of the books I've had an opportunity to do is interview everyone from like Steve Wozniak, who started Apple Computers, all the way down to the guy who invented the cell phone. I got a chance to sit down with Evander Holyfield, to Miss America, to the guy who started Chuck E. Cheese and, Chick-fil-A restaurants. And it was really interesting to see the common denominators between all these people. And one thing they had is called stickability, and it's called the power to persevere. And
stickability and flexibility.
Yes.
You got to have it.
That is the key to all success. Stickability and flexibility. If you don't have them together, if you can't adapt and adjust, you end up getting stuck. So it's very important to make sure that you also surround yourself with people we have respect for, not people we have influence over. I'm going to say it again. Surround yourself with people we have respect for, not people we have influence over. That is the key to success right there. Most people have their cronies and their yes people. I don't. Right. For example, if I'm on stage in front of 10,000 people and it's a standing ovation, as soon as I get off, I'm looking for my mentor to say, Greg, here's where you messed up. Here's where you did something wrong. Because I'm not going to learn from the standing ovation. I'm only going to learn by the little critique where I could have done things better for the next time.
Definitely. That's something good to even live off of. There was another thing I seen on your page. You said you learned, I think it was about when you were writing a book. I forgot what the book is called. I think you learned it from a 6-year-old though. Oh yeah, that was called 3 Feet from Gold. And this kid came over. Well, there's a whole family, and the family's touring the house, and they left this 6-year-old kid sitting there. And I go, well, what do you want to talk about while they're out there looking around? Right. I said, you want to talk about philosophy? And he goes, what's philosophy? And I said, well, is the glass half full? Is the glass half empty? Right. And he got quiet, and all of a sudden he goes, it depends where it began. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, if the glass was empty and you poured liquid in, it's half full. But if it was full and you poured half out, it's half empty. Right. It's all a perspective of how you look at it. Mm-hmm. And I wrote that in one of my world best-selling books. It went to like 45 different languages, all based on what a kid, shared with me sitting in the living room. That's why it's like you said, talk to everyone. You could learn something. Everyone you meet is going to know something you don't know. And that is the key to happiness right there, because you get to get all kinds of different perspectives. I'll give you one. I'm doing a new book. It's out right now. It's called The Secret of Happiness. For years, went around and interviewed famous people, movie stars and celebrities and regular people. Does that do something for you? Yes. What? Like, as far as, does that make you feel any way when you get around these celebrities, or does it do anything for you? Only because I'm learning something from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. But does it feed me because I'm hanging out with them? Nah, it's just part of that's our daily life. So it's kind of our normal. But what's interesting is
we had this philosophy of the secret of happiness was a subtractive equation and not an additional equation. Meaning, every time we add a car, a house, a boat, a relationship, we think that that will bring us happiness, but it doesn't. So we go, then if you subtract something, that's happiness. And you subtract shame, guilt, remorse, toxicity, then that's your happiness. And I remember I was so proud of this. And I went to dinner with this Hispanic gal. And she goes, "You're not seeing things from the real life world." I said, "Well, teach me. Student's mindset." And she goes, "Look," she goes, "where I grew up in a little village in Mexico." He goes, "My whole family for generations have been applying for visas, and I'm the first person to ever make it through." She goes, "When I got accepted, you would have thought I won the gold medal for the Olympics."
The lottery.
Exactly. She goes, "But when I actually became a citizen and I bought my first car, a really nice one on my own credit in America," she goes, "you would have thought for real I was a red carpet, movie star." And she goes, "Where you have so much abundance living in a first world country, you got so much you can throw stuff away and still have happiness. By us adding this one thing gave hope to over 1,000 people in the village in which I come from."
Mm-hmm.
So in our case, an addition equation was our secret of happiness.
So I guess that's another thing. It comes from perspective. Because like she explained to you, this addition for me takes my family to another level. That subtraction for you takes you guys to another level. So I guess it comes from perspective.
Yeah. Well, things are the way you think they are because you think they are that way.
Right.
And all we know is all we know. That's it. And so until you're educated or informed from a different perspective, you can only see a thing from one way. It's funny. The guy who started Chuck E. Cheese, I've said his name or mentioned it a bunch of times. His name's Gene Landrum. And he said, "With enough examination, all truths become false." And it sat with me. And he says, "All truths become false." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, there's no such thing as fact." He goes, "A fact is only where the general population agrees to be true." And so what do you mean? He says, "Well, at one time, Christopher Columbus days, the world was flat." He goes, "That was just the general belief. So that was a fact of that time." He goes, "When you went to school, you yourself, Pluto was a planet when you were a kid, but now it's not. Back in the 1980s, it was a fact you could catch AIDS from a toilet seat until it was proven not. In our lifetime, COVID, well, unless you wore this mask, you're going to catch COVID, which we turned out not to be true."
Right.
So a fact is only a fact when the general population agrees that it's so. And then that can change at any time.
That's crazy. I just heard a quote like that today. They said history is just, they basically said what people agreed upon at the time.
Correct.
And that's what was history.
And it's written by the winners. That's the crazy part. So if you and I got in a fist fight right now, right? Even though you're the bigger, stronger guy, and by most odds and statistics would kick my tail, but if I got lucky and I landed one and I told the story, it would be a completely different version than if you won that fight.
Exactly.
And so history is only written by the winners of war, of politics, of history, of everything. And it's always of the conquerors. And what story are they going to tell of their glorification, of course?
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense as well. I had a question. What was the first time where you saw like a substantial amount of money?
Still looking
that
for
made
it.
you feel like,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure, and you're going to continue looking for it. But what was the point that you felt like this was a good one?
I've had quite a few of those moments, those little nice job type of things. And I believe in celebrating those victories. And a lot of people don't do that. Let me give you an example. There's 10 things that are going on in your life, my life, the camera guy's life right now. 8 of them are awesome. One of them's iffy and one of them sucks. What do we focus on? The sucky one. And we don't give ourselves credit enough to go, hey, good job paying the rent this month. Hey, good job, paying that electricity bill. And I live my life that way. So every time I have these little successes, I go out and celebrate them. So for example, if I have a good little hit, as you saw, I go buy a car or I go buy a new thing or something of this nature as a token of my celebration that I did something well. Because if I just keep the money in the bank or whatever, that's fleeting and it's gone. But every time I get in that new AMG, I go, hey, that was that good score that I did on that one deal.
That's that pat on the back.
Yeah, that's that little thing. So that's what I do for myself.
So how do the rich stay rich?
It's a
You
great
kind of
question.
spoke on a little bit about it earlier.
Well, the whole idea is, again, surround yourself with people you have respect for, not
Mhm.
people you have influence over. I did a book called Wealth Made Easy, and I interviewed people worth $100 million to $1 billion for 3 years. And I kept asking them these questions, same exact thing.
You interview these people for the span of 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. I mean, I spoke to people. It was really interesting. The people worth $10 million and below, those are the new Beverly Hillbillies. People had a quick exit, an invention, an inheritance, something of this nature. And they're the happiest people. These
And 10 million
and
is
below.
a small number?
Yeah, 10 million and below are the happiest people. The people with a B number, a billion,
Mhm.
happy. But these people worth 100 to like $300 million, I wouldn't trade my life for them, not one of those people. And they're the most miserable people I met for myself.
Mhm.
And the reason is because you think how much money that is, but they think they're so far away from that B number that they have 3 cell phones, their relationships are crap, their health's not very good, and they're striving to hit this other thing. They're still going for this monument, so to speak. And I realized for myself, these 10 million and below, these are the happiest people. The billionaires people, pretty happy, but like 100, 300 million, I wouldn't trade my life with one person I interviewed.
Is it because they feel like they're in the midpoint?
They're so far away. So for example, if you had 10 grand and you want, say, oh, well, I want 100 grand, we're still, that's a long way away.
Right.
If you wanted 100 grand, you wanted $1 million, that's a long way. Well, that's
Right.
100 million to $1 billion.
Mhm.
It's the same exact feeling. And I also realized that the people that celebrated their success and stuff like that, they're the ones that had the most enjoyment. For example, the people that feel the wealthiest that I realize are the people that have a modicum of debt. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. So for example, if you saved up and got $10,000 in the bank, mentally we go, well, why isn't that 20? And why isn't that thing? So you're always doing this what if or why not type
Like,
system.
why can't I have more?
Exactly. But it's someone who's working a corporate job. They're making 150 grand. They give them a company BMW and a Rolex watch, and they got their mortgage to the tilt, but they're living the American dream. They're the happiest people. They have a vision of success and they feel the most successful.
Mhm.
But it's the people that have attained it, they don't feel it as much.
There was another thing you said earlier. How do you find a way for basically everything to pay for itself without you having to go in your pocket?
Well, that's called OPM, other people's money. And
Right.
it's-
Oh, Dom Kennedy.
So the whole idea is to surround yourself with people, again, that have got resources outside your own. And so I believe in collaboration. So for example, sometimes I would say work your strengths, hide your weaknesses. But here's another thing, work your strengths and collaborate your weaknesses. So let's just say you had a cool logo and a buddy of yours makes websites. And another guy down the street's got a printing machine, type of a thing that he bought for his kids, soccer hats or something. Well, if all 3 of you come together as a collective and start a new business, you could have a clothing line up and running tomorrow.
Mhm.
And it didn't take a lot of money out of pocket. And a lot of people don't see those type of resources, but they're all around us. In fact, 80% of every single thing we need is already within our sphere of influence. It's already on your phone. You already met that person at a networking event or a kid's birthday party, and you're waiting for the perfect time to reach out. So for me, I just always reach out to these people. I do something called contact roulette. I wake up every single day and go, zzz, and I send that person a text. Zzz, I have no idea who it is. Send them a text. And what happens is it says, sending you a drive-by hi from the mean streets of San Diego. That's it.
So you're just sending a text message saying basically, hi, hey,
That's it.
good morning,
Checking in.
whatever.
And it'll blow your mind how many deals, things, resources, dates, things I get out of it because all of a sudden you're staying in touch.
Mhm.
And most people are waiting, and I just always am reaching out. But back to Wealth Made Easy. Let me tell you a couple little stories. One guy I interviewed, his name was Tonino Lamborghini. You guys know Lamborghini. And I said, how did you guys create so much wealth and abundance in your life? And he says, all you got to do is create a product, good, service, or experience that people save their money to hand it to you, and you'll never run out of cash. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, no one's saving their money to buy your book, Greg. He goes, but they're cashing in their 401k to drive my car. He says, you're not going to spend $3,000 a night to live in your own apartment, but you're going to go to Anaheim and give it to a mouse with big ears. He goes, if you can create a product, good, service, or experience that people save their money to give to you, you'll never run out of cash. And so that's how we started our Secret Knock. That's how we started our associations and our prosperity camps, because we created such a great experience that people will save their money to go to, because we know their return on their investment is 10x when they leave. And so if you can create that type of mindset, your life will never be the same.
And like you just said, you've created that product to now sustain whoever knows how long that's going to go. It's been going for you for this long. What you said, 19 years?
17 years.
17 years now. How do you continue, and what's the goal, the end goal for it?
I don't have one in mind. All I know is it feeds me.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a great quote. Are you guys ready for this one? If you're at home, this would be your note time on this one. If it feeds you, feed it more. And if it eats, kill it. If it feeds you, feed it more. And if it eats, kill it. That's it. That's the mentality. So if something feeds you physically, mentally, spiritually, physically, whatever, feed it more. Mm-hmm. But if something's eating, taken away, you got to let it go. And as soon as you have that mindset and sit and look around you, what's feeding you and what's eating will change your whole perspective of what's around you.
Mm-hmm. And what have you found that has been eating and not feeding you?
Many times. It could be past, again, relationships. It could be employees that have had challenge. It could be deals with publishers. It could be, they're around us all the time. There's toxic things that, we invite accidentally sometimes into our existence, and we have to have the courage and fortitude to let them go. Mm-hmm. So that's the key. I always say this one quote: do the hardest thing first and the rest is easy. How many times have we put off that tough conversation or paying your taxes or doing whatever is hard? And to me, I wake up every day and go, what's the hardest thing I got to do? And I do that first thing. And then the rest of the day is cakewalk. Most people live with that negative or that heavy thing on them, and I don't do that.
How have you made co-parenting easy, or has it always?
Always, it has been. And again, I've got a killer ex-former wife, just absolutely amazing. And we don't agree to a lot of the stuff, but we're so respectful of each other that we can have an open conversation. Plus we have family meetings. So once every month or so, we get together, have dinner and go, family meeting time. How are we going to handle this situation? What do you think about this? What should be the new bedtime as he's getting older? How are we going to do this? And we do it as a family. Open communication.
That, I was just about to say, that seems like something that you have been basically living your life on, just open communication. Yeah. That's with business, with your family, that's with everything.
Yes, that's it. The more that we can communicate, the more we can have dialogue. Look, you and I were just doing it earlier. I always come from a place of, I'm just giving my perspective to help one another. It's never a negative space. It's always, hey, here's what I've learned. I'm just a student one step ahead. Mm-hmm. So if I walked and stepped in a hole, how shameful is it for me not to say, dude, watch out for that hole?
Right.
So that's why earlier when I was talking to you, that's where I come from. I'm just going, hey, man, just so you know, we want to be careful. My first mentor I ever had in public speaking, his name's Les Brown. He's a motivational legend. And he has this quote, says, you got to be hungry. And I hunted him down and says, Mr. Brown, I'm asking for one bit of feedback, one thing I could do different in my speaking career. And he gave it to me. I hunted him down a month later. I said, Mr. Brown, I asked you a month ago for a tip. You gave it to me. Here's my results. What should I do next? The chance of him giving me that next nugget is 100%. And here's this thing. He says, when you're on stage and you have a microphone and you hold it like this, you can tell an amateur right from the beginning. And I go, why? He goes, they're blocking their face and they're nervous and subconsciously scared. And he says, so what I do is I hold the microphone at the very end of it. You look at every picture and I hold it out here. This way I'm holding it. You can still hear me, but I'm connecting with my audience. He goes, do that one simple tip and get back to me and tell me what you thought. Mm-hmm. And changed everything. So now on stage, I'm like, hey, everybody, if you believe in your dream. And it just changed my paradigm from this. And that one simple little thing changed everything. Then I went to another mentor and said, what do I do? And they said, well, behind you, everywhere you speak has got a black background. So on stage, never wear black. So if you notice every photograph of me speaking, I got a yellow jacket, a green jacket, a red jacket. I'm not trying to be cool. I just want to pop off the screen. Mm-hmm. So every speaker before me is in black and he's just like a talking head on that screen. As soon as I walk out, people feel connected to me because I'm literally connecting to them because I'm popping off that screen.
Mm-hmm. That's another good tip. See, this is like you said, this is the time to get your notebook out. What drew you to Les Brown?
He's a legend. And not only that, but I should say, surround yourself with people that are getting the results that you want for yourself. And he's getting the results that I want. I wanted to get paid speaking gigs. I wanted to speak to 10,000 people audiences. I wanted that same thing. So I only seek people who are doing what I want to do. When I made my first major movie, I said, all right, who's won an Oscar? Who's won a Golden Globe? Who's won Emmys? Those are the people I went to Hollywood and sat down and met with because they're already doing what I want. When I wanted to be a best-selling author, I went to Barnes & Noble. I bought every best-selling book. I called those authors up and said, teach me the system. They did. Here we are today. Surround yourself with people who are getting the results you want.
How do you get to those people, though?
The most successful people are the most available people. If you're brand new, you're happy-go-lucky, you're fresh, you're cool. If you're at the top, happy-go-lucky, you got nothing to prove. In the middle, pain in the neck. You're filled with ego. You're edging God out. So I jump to the front of the line. As a kid, you get in trouble because you jump to the front of the line. As an adult, you get rewarded for it. So all I do is find who's getting the results I want, and I go directly to that person. It is easier to get to the founder of Remax Real Estate multi-trillion-dollar corporation than the actual president of Remax office down the street because he's filled with ego. He's got all these secretaries and receptionists, and he thinks he's cool, but it's easier to get to the person. So I realized that and started reaching out. And here's my secret sauce. This is it. And people always say, it's easy for you to get, introductions because it's me, but you never heard of me. You never heard of me. No one's ever heard of me. But here's my secret. Specificity. And I know it's not the right word. I'm dyslexic, but you get the idea. And by the way, why did they make the word dyslexic the hardest word to spell for dyslexic, right? Never understood that. So the idea of specificity is this. I reach out to people, again, let's just say the founder of Remax, and I say, Dave, I'm asking for 12.5 minutes of your time. I'll cover all my own costs and expense to come see you. From the moment I open the door till the time I leave will be 12 and a half minutes. I'll start a stopwatch. I'm going to ask you X, Y, Z. The chance of him coming down from his office to the break room is so high. But most people just don't get it. They go, I want to pick your brain. That sounds painful. I want to buy you coffee. I want to take you to dinner. I want to buy you lunch. No one wants to go out to lunch with you. No one knows who you are. Time is money. And people don't understand that. So with that specificity of that 12.5 minutes, that is key. So for me, that's how I open the doors. Sometimes, again, if I do a big speaking gig and there's a line of people that want to meet and take pictures, they say the nicest thing. How can I be of contribution? How can I be of service? I don't got 30 minutes for a resume check. Someone comes up and says, hey, dude, love your talk. I saw your TikTok, saw your Instagram. You got millions of followers. I make really cool videos. Let me send you one. If you like it, maybe you'll use me. In 8 seconds, I know who you are, what you do. You got my cell phone. We're in contact. That's the key.
Time is money, basically. So like everything, like you, that situation you gave, that 12 and a half minutes, was that something that actually happened for you? Or like
that's what I do.
Right.
Not only does it happen, that's how I just told you the exact system. So when I reach out to Lamborghini or this person, I need 12.5 minutes of your time. I'm going to cover all my own costs and expense to get to you. From the time I open the door to the time I leave will be this. I'm going to ask you one simple question. Pop, pop, pop. It's a model that's worked.
That's
time after time after time after time after time after time. That's it.
And what's the next new thing that you have coming up?
Well, I'm doing my last book right now. It's called Personal Development. And when it's published at the end of the year, that's it. I'm out. I'm retiring from doing books. I'm going to go into the publishing side. I'm going to help other people that want to become authors. Since I got that dialed in, I'm going to help them get their stories and their books out. But I'm going into more mainstream media. So I'm working on 2 TV shows, a couple movies that I'm working on right now. In fact, we'll be filming one here next year in San Diego. I'm pretty excited about it. It's called Barrio de Beverly Hills. It's a Romeo and Juliet story where a Hispanic gal from Barrio Logan falls in love with a rich guy from Beverly Hills. And the dichotomy of those two families collide and they push and pull each other apart to finally come together at Balboa Park and re-engage, called Barrio de Beverly Hills.
Does it have anything to do with your story?
No.
Okay. Thought that was like having something to do with your story.
I grew up, from Del Mar, from the...
Right, you just had to switch it up a little bit further for wherever it happened. But definitely, can you let people know how they can reach you?
Yeah, Instagram. We'll just go back to that. Greg S. Reed. Just go there. It goes directly to me, DM, just reach out. Here's my only request. I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want my brain picked. But if you sit there and say, hey, what book should I read? What's a good resource for the thing I'm working on? I'd be glad to get to you 100%.
Perfect. With that being said, this has been another episode of the Big Umbrella Podcast, and it's a wrap.
let's get some tacos, nigga. Can we really get some tacos? You trying to get some tacos? Let's get some tacos, nigga.